Afternoon, everyone, again. Welcome. This is the Space Mission Venturing from Startup to Beyond webinar. And to kick off the event, I have the pleasure of introducing UQ's Pro Vice Chancellor for Global Engagement and Entrepreneurship, Dr. Jessica Gallagher.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and welcome everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to the Space Mission webinar. My name is Jess Gallagher and I'm the Pro Vice Chancellor of Global Engagement at the University of Queensland. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianships of the lands where many of us meet today and pay respects to their elders and descendants. It's a really great pleasure for me to be able to provide a short opening address at today's Space Mission webinar, and my sincere thanks to everybody who's been involved in the development of this afternoon's event. We're excited to have this opportunity to collaborate with the Embassy of Israel in Australia to showcase the entrepreneurial spirit of our space community and deepen our understanding of space exploration and innovation. Renewed interest in space exploration in recent years can partly be credited to the falling costs of launch and rapid technology development. This has meant that space is no longer restricted to governments. We've seen many private companies create more accessible, less expensive reach into outer space. Space industry startups are expected to play a major role in space exploration, and I think that that's a fantastic thing. In addition, many national governments are launching ambitious space strategies. The Australian government opened its space agency in 2018 and aims to triple the size of Australia's space economy to 12 billion by 2030. Today's webinar will bring together industry experts from the space, aerospace and engineering fields to discuss the range of space activities being undertaken by our two countries and the role that we are playing in shaping the next generation of space leaders. We are absolutely delighted to have an incredible lineup of leading space experts joining us online. Our special guest, Kfir Damari, one of SpaceIL Co-founders, will share his inspirational story of their novel attempt to reach space. And Aude Vignells will address the progress of the Australian Space Agency and the future of Australia's space sector. I'm also really looking forward to hearing the highly informed discussions of our inspirational speakers, Anna Marie Arabia, David Ball, and Myrta Snooks. This webinar provides an opportunity to celebrate our strong and dynamic space sector and showcase Australia's achievements in space activities to inspire young people to take up STEM careers, to engage in entrepreneurship and innovation activities, and support the growth of the future workforce. At UQ, we have a clear vision of knowledge leadership for a better world, and our role in supporting entrepreneurs and innovators has never been more vital. We're incredibly proud of the work being done by UQ student Myrta Snooks and the UQ space team, whose moonshot mission is to inspire the entire nation and to fly Australia's first student-built rocket to space next year. Fingers crossed that this all goes to plan. Through UQ Ventures, our students, staff and alumni access programs to develop the knowledge, networks and skills to think and act like an entrepreneur and to move between current and emerging careers. There is support from design thinking and ideation through to market validation and from starting a business to scaling one. For example, our panel moderator for today, Andrew Uskinski, recently participated in our iLab Accelerator program at UQ Ventures. His startup, Valiant Space, has high ambitions and great potential. Created by a team of UQ engineering students, Andrew's team successfully test-fired the first commercial liquid-fueled rocket in Australian history. This is an important step towards Australia being able to put scientific and commercial payloads on the moon. Thank you to everybody who's watching and contributing and being part of today's webinar. I'll hand you back to Andrew now so that we can begin. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gallagher. And on that note, before we begin, I'll elaborate a bit on Valiant Space. So like I said, my name is Andrew. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Valiant Space. And we're an in-space propulsion company. And our vision is to enable the next generation of space transportation. And like Dr. Gallagher said, in March of this year, we successfully fired Australia's first commercially developed liquid-fueled rocket engine, and we're now continuing our success by building our next engine, which will help propel small to medium satellites in and around orbit and eventually to the moon and Mars and beyond. Now, we're using non-toxic propellants as part of this, which will help our customers save time, money, and reduce the risk of their missions. And compared to other non-toxic options that exist today, our thrusters have a significantly higher thrust, so you can maneuver a satellite quickly in a matter of hours, not months, allowing you to operate for longer and ultimately access more value out of your satellite. Right now, we're building and testing. We have a hot fire test coming up very, very soon. So check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn to follow our story and reach out to us if you want to find out more about what Valiant is doing. So fantastic. Firstly, we have Anna Maria Arabia to start our incredible lineup of speakers. And she's the Chief Executive of the Australian Academy of Science. So please take it away, Anna.
Thank you ever so much for inviting me to speak today. As just mentioned, I'm the Chief Executive of the Australian Academy of Science, and we have a very deep interest and commitment to space science. Before I commence, I'd like to acknowledge the land, the land on which I'm meeting today. I'm on the land of the Ngunnawal people, and I'd like to recognise their elders past, present and emerging. The Academy supports and promotes science through independent, authoritative and influential scientific advice, through promoting international scientific engagement, building public awareness and understanding of science, and championing excellence in Australian science. And each part of that mission very much applies to space science and its promulgation in Australia. Science plays such an important role within the world of space and space missions. And of course, space science asks and answers fundamental questions and engages industry to help answer them. Space agencies such as NASA and our very own pursue science-driven missions, knowing that exploration and science outcomes are really important, but also drive innovation and outcomes that benefit all of society. A great example of this is space technologies that are assisting us during the pandemic. Satellite communication and the internet have become our main forms of communication, as we all know far too well, and Earth observation data has produced images highlighting the consequences of the world's public health measures as just one example, but there are many, many more we could point to in terms of how disciplines are working together and how relevant space science and space industry is to our current circumstances. So when we do talk about the space industry, we need to consider space science as well. And science and applied science, as it's undertaken in industry, really are an extension of each other. And we're very symbiotic, we depend on each other. Science helps drive industry by providing skills, and industry informs science of the gaps that need filling. The Academy supports this important relationship by providing a voice to the space science sector through representation at international science bodies and through Australia's National Committee for Space and Radio Science, which is one of the 22 national committees hosted by the Academy of Science. This very committee, this very national committee, includes a diverse range of experts from the space science sector who are passionate and very, very able and skilled to inform the future of space science as a discipline and very much set the agenda for that discipline. The field of space science and technology is growing at a very fast rate. We will be convinced of this if we are not already by the end of this webinar. And this is certainly relevant in the National Committee's first latest strategic plan, which was produced in 2010. It was a 10-year strategic plan, and actually the objectives it set out and its vision were achieved before the 10-year frame. And that is unusual. Mostly we get to the end of a strategic plan and we feel satisfied if we've achieved 75% of the things we set out to do. The space science strategic plan, which was brought together by the science community, realised its objectives in record time. So now we are currently working on the next 10-year plan that will assist us in shaping the desires of the sector going forward. I'll come back to that in a moment. One of the great achievements, well worth mentioning, is one of the funded projects that's come out that was, I guess, promoted through that National Committee and that strategic plan was Aquawatch Australia, and that's a collaboration between the SmartSat, CRC and CSIRO, and that monitors water quality across the nation. So as I said, that 2010 strategic plan has concluded, and the Academy is currently managing the production together with the space science sector of the next 10-year strategic plan for science, and that will be complete in the coming months. So we hope it's a useful document for the entire space science enterprise. That's being developed with our partners, CSIRO, the Australian Space Agency and the SmartSat CRC, and the process will see the amalgamation of input and feedback and opinions from right across the sector who represent fields of space science and also from a range of other influential organisations. It will help devise those recommendations we need to inform and direct policymakers and funding bodies around the future needs of the industry, so that we can really put our best foot forward in Australia over the next 10 years. And it unifies the voice of the sector, which is often a difficult thing to do because there are often many ambitions, but it is a unifying document and direction for the space science sector. One of the many memberships the Academy of Science holds is it's a national member for COSPAR, representing Australian space science at this peak global body. And with the guidance of our National Committee, we play a critical role in connecting Australian-based scientists to that global community. COSPAR, as you know, is the Committee for Space Research of the International Science Council, was founded at the start of the space age with the goal to promote free and impartial international discussions about space. It's known for its global biennial international conferences, which many of you may have attended, and it will be held for the first time in the Southern Hemisphere with the Academy's support in January of next year, so COSPAR 2021. Don't let a pandemic get in the way, it's still going ahead. Through the Academy, we will continue to provide opportunities for scientific meetings, including symposia, general assemblies and congresses at both a national and international level. And we encourage you to stay in touch because working together makes us stronger. The benefits of engagement with global science organisations such as COSPAR and the International Science Council provide invaluable opportunities for Australian scientists, especially young scientists, to meet and mix with international leaders in their field in a way that greatly accelerates delivery of the long-term economic benefits of scientific progress for Australia. The demand for space research and industry is growing at a rapid pace. The Academy supports a vigorous and well-supported space industry sustained by a strong space research sector. We hope to see the space community capitalise on Australia's strengths and increase our sovereign capabilities. I'll leave it there, and I very much look forward to the contributions by the other speakers. Thanks again.
Thank you, Anna. Now on to our next speaker, which is David Ball, who's the chair of the Space Industry Association of Australia.
Great, thank you, Andrew, and thank you to University of Queensland for the opportunity to participate in the webinar today. It's a great opportunity to meet and talk to some of the next generation of budding space industry pioneers and researchers. To start out, I'd like to acknowledge the lands on which we're all meeting around Australia, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. From the Space Industry Association point of view, as Andrew mentioned, I'm the current chair of the association, having been on the board for some years. I'm also the regional director for space for Lockheed Martin Australia, and to Anna Maria's commentary around COSPAR, Lockheed Martin's very pleased and honoured to be the anchor sponsor for that event. I'm on the local organising committee for COSPAR and know firsthand how much work's going in to pull that event together and the great academic lineup that we'll see in January next year in Sydney, and also virtually with the hybrid nature of the format. So we're very pleased to be able to support that event. Talk a little bit about the Space Industry Association of Australia. We have about 750 members, and our members are across the entire part of the industry, from the research side of the house through folks who are building launch vehicles, designing launch facilities, manufacturing satellites, looking at space legal issues, space regulations, space insurance, satellite communications, Earth observation, space domain awareness and space traffic management, a huge issue which is going to trouble us all in the future, Earth observation, geospatial intelligence. And our members span from the large corporates such as the one I work for, through to government departments, smaller corporates in Australia, non-profits, some university memberships. SmartSat CRC is also a member with us, as well as many individual members, and a recent category we have created, which has been the introductory membership, where folks can join for 12 months at no cost and try before you buy effectively and understand and get engaged with the sector. And I know we got a number of questions come through from the audience before the panel, one of which was how to get engaged with the industry. And for folks that are still in university, I'd strongly urge you to look at the Australian Youth Aerospace Association, who do a tremendous amount of work pulling together conferences and events all year round. They've done a great job with the conference called Aerospace Futures, which runs annually. That's been a tremendous achievement. We then pick up people as they graduate, if you will, and as they enter industry. It's really fascinating to look at how that STEM engagement over time progresses. That fundamental research that we spoke of earlier in Anna Maria's talk and in Andrew's work with Alliant Space is so important as you start to take low TRL capability through to commercialised capability. And that's what Australia has to do as we go on this space journey. SIAA several years ago was the anchor sponsor, the host for the International Astronautical Congress, which came to Australia back in 2017. And I know firsthand how much work that took to pull off that conference. And that really showcased Australia on the world stage, but really helped our politicians see the future of space and see the practical way space can impact our lives, and the fact that there is a real industry that's tangible and beneficial to the nation. So the Space Agency was announced at the opening ceremony of IAC 2017, and I know that Aude's going to talk to us a bit about where the agency's been on that roadmap since formation in the middle of 2018. But we were very pleased to host IAC to really help put Australia on the map. So that's one of the things we do as an industry, is run a number of industry events, working with the agency very closely, engaging about industry topics, responding to papers that have put out about various scenarios and various issues, but also looking at how to engage more broadly. One of the things we've done is create a space business conference around the Avalon Air Show, which is held every second year. So we had that a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, Avalon's been pushed back due to COVID, but our commitment to engage with Avalon and run that event is unwavering. We think it's a critical event for the industry to be there at that event, to take the focus of space forward with that very important international audience which comes in to see Avalon. So that's probably a quick wrap up on SIAA. Our membership has grown by about 100% in the last year. So we're thrilled to see the new membership coming through, the nice bright young faces coming through, the talent Australia has. It's really important we capture that and illustrate to them where they can go in their careers with industry. With that, I'll hand back to Andrew. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Fantastic. Now on to our next speaker, which is Matthias Snokes. So she's the Managing Director of UQ Space and a UQ Engineering and Arts student. So without further ado, please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And thank you very much to UQ as well for inviting me to this webinar. It's a great privilege to be talking with all of these highly experienced and knowledgeable people from across both industry and government, which is a fantastic opportunity. I look forward to discussing things further on as well. As Andrew and Dr. Gallagher earlier addressed, my name is Matthias Snokes. I'm the Managing Director of UQ Space. We're a student organisation located at the University of Queensland, predominantly focused on increasing the human capability in Australia. We're trying to not just inspire and engage high school students by showcasing them that as soon as you get into university, you have the opportunity to get hands-on involved with industry, with projects, with things that go above and beyond anything you could have imagined. Far too often, we've heard, at least in high school students, the idea, oh, I wasn't aware that I could do that in Australia. I thought that to get involved in the aerospace industry, I had to go to NASA, I had to go to SpaceX. How amazing is it to be able to work on actual rockets, to engage with local industry in Queensland for us, in this case, Black Sky Aerospace, but also Valiant Space, as new and upcomer here as well, or even industry in South Australia and now the Australian space industry as well, an agency. We are currently focused on Project Asteria, which is our space shot project, or moonshot, as a massive goal to achieve over the next year, trying to be the first university to launch a student-built and designed rocket and scientific payload to 100 kilometres of the common line, or boundary of space, as we're aware. The challenges that brings are not just technical challenges. We found we require legal knowledge. We need more than just engineers in the space industry. We need everyone. We need politicians to understand what's going on, but we also need the lawyers, the OH&S students. We need everyone. And we found that by collaborating internally, we can actually achieve goals that we thought were unachievable and unattainable. We've now been able to collaborate with industries internationally as well, with the Technical University in Delft in the Netherlands, with a few meetings with that, the University of Southern California in the United States, building on a lot of the academic research that has been done over the past years at UQ, specializing in hypersonics, and other places across the globe, taking that knowledge, really putting your hands to work and creating something with industry is what we're focused on, and what we're really proud of as well. And we hope to increase that over the next years. We've got more than 100 students working on different projects at this point in time, and I believe the opportunities are endless, and I look forward to hearing what we can work on in the future. That's all from me to start off with. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Now, I would like to introduce you to Aude Vignells, who is the Executive Director of the Australian Space Agency. Now, Aude is a space and aeronautic engineer and has extensive knowledge and experience in the space industry, and she's going to give an overview on the future of the Australian space sector. So take it away, Aude.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for having me. And it's so nice to hear all the talks before me, and it's resonating, echoing, and I think we are picking up on everything you said. So I'm very, very happy to give you a bit of an update of the last 2 years. We are 2 years old. And yes, when AEST, when the creation of the agency was announced, there were a lot of people with tears in their eyes. 2 years later, we've achieved so much. I'm going to try to give you the highlights in 15 minutes. And there is so much to come. So, and there is something with everything. I think, Mirte, you said that very well. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to work in space. Any jobs that exist on Earth has an application in space, and we need all of that. All the space needs a variety of disciplines. So again, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. Having said that, we need a lot of space system engineers. That's very, very crucial, but this is not a must. So Jessica did say that very well. We have a very clear goal. We have 20,000 jobs to create, and we have to triple the size of the industry. That's as simple as that. And every day, we're only 40 in the agency, and we're trying to match up what ESA, NASA, and other agencies are doing. So when we have some priority calls to make, we're always asking ourselves, is this going to help me creating jobs and growing the industry? If the answer is no, we just go to the next task. It's really important for us to keep that in mind. There was a question asked about what are competitive advantage in Australia, and you may have seen a year ago we've published our national civil space strategy, and what we've tried to do through that work is to identify the area where we believe we have a competitive advantage. We're coming late in the party. We have to make sure that we are making some clever and smart choice of where we want to invest and where we want to grow. So this civil space strategy highlights 7 areas that the expert review group which led to the creation of the agency had identified. They worked very hard for a year, consulting with the whole nation, traveling in every state and territory. The 7 priorities are quite straightforward. Position, navigation, timing. You look at the land mass of Australia, the more precision we have in time and positioning, and the more application we're going to be able to develop. So we are working heavily on this. Earth observation. Anna did mention that very well. We use a lot of Earth observation for measuring the impact of COVID. But of course, you remember the devastating bushfires we had last Christmas. We have relied so much on the data we are receiving from Earth observation satellites to try to prevent the fires, to try to manage them better when they occur, and to recover from them. So all disasters, for the size of a country like Australia, Earth observation satellites is definitely a must. And we have developed a very range of expertise and skills in aggregating the data you collect from satellites and processing them to deliver an application that can be used on the ground. So that's Earth observation. Communication, again, Anna and Jessica did mention that, very important to have communication delivered by satellite for the size of our country. But even further, the next level and the advanced technology in comms is optical comms. And for optical laser comms, you need blue skies. We have blue skies in Australia, so we are developing, and that's an initiative of ANU in space, who are developing and supporting the development of optical ground station network, so that if there is clouds over one region, another optical ground station can take over. And we are hosting already a lot of ground station for communication for the Deep Space Network at NASA and ESA. So we are continuing developing this. Space situational awareness, and that's also something we are looking at the southern sky. So again, we have a position that is very privileged, and we are developing a big range of sensors, radar, passive, active, on the ground, and telescopes and optical telescope to look into what is in orbit around the Earth. You know that there is more than 20,000 objects in orbit around the Earth, and probably only 2,000 that are active. The rest is dead satellites or debris. With all the constellation in low Earth orbit, the problem is becoming really, really big. It's going to become an issue if we have collisions, creating a chain reaction. We have to use space responsibly, and as a young agency, it's very important that we're implementing rules and guidelines, and that when we launch a satellite, we make sure that at the end of life, it re-entry in the atmosphere and burned. And it's very important that we know at all time where our satellites are, and we can predict where they're going to be, so that if there is a risk of collision, we can give an advice on where to maneuver your satellite to avoid the collision. So again, lots of data to process and an algorithm to create to provide this decision making with a great level of accuracy. So we are very active in space situational awareness along the whole value chain. Access to space has been also, of course, an area of priority. Regulation first. We want to make sure that whoever wants to launch satellites and rockets from Australia does it safely. So that's the first step, and we're gonna look to explore what else we're gonna do with the access to space, but very important priority for Australia. Remote operation and robotics, and that's really looking at our expertise we have in mining, 40 years of mining in Australia. We are very good in managing remote assets. And if you have a chance one day to go to Perth and ask Rio Tinto or other mining company, can I visit your operation center? You'll be amazed. You have the impression to enter a space control center. You have pods of people doing either drilling or managing the trucks or managing the train, and they are doing all these 2,000 kilometers away from the site and they're using tools that are highly precise and that are coping with latency because they're using the geostationary communication satellite. And this management of assets, the skills and expertise we have is completely exportable to space, because to build the gateway, to build stuff on the moon, but we do the robots remotely before sending people. And we are really one of the best in the world in this remote management aspect. And then we have another bucket of leapfrog R&D. And here is all the things that, you know, are very, very creative in Australia. So we pick things every day that we think, oh, we need to do another bucket of priority there. And one that really became quite obvious really quickly was space medicine and life science. If we want to go to the moon and beyond, technology, we're getting there, but how is the human body being going to help to cope with being in space? That's something we have actually also quite a lot of expertise because of the Antarctica division we're running in Australia. So 9 months of the time in the year we are there. These people are completely isolated, and they need to be able to have remote diagnosis and being able to cope mentally as well with this isolation. So lots of exports that we can do into space with this. So that's our priorities that we have published in April 2019. And my group is now looking into developing a roadmap, next level of details for the next 10 years. Making sure we know where we want to be in next 10 years, what is the state of the art today, and what are the pathways to reach this vision, creating these jobs, creating opportunities, attracting investment. And we are working with the Academy of Science, who are also working into the decadal plan. We're actually having some people in our working group to make sure we're all doing that aligned, because we may be more industry focused. Academy of Science is more science in focus, but at some point all this is merging. So that's the big piece of work we've been doing. And the other two big programs we've been doing are this International Space Initiative. So you may have seen, and there are a lot of details on our website. We have run competitive grants, and we've selected 10 projects that goes from a skin suit to a software to help decision-making in SSA, to virtual reality tools to train astronauts. So key projects that are aligned with our priorities. And we were over-submitted. We have so many applications, and we had only to pick 10, which was heartbreaking. I wish we had more funds to fund more. Hopefully there'll be more rounds. But we have now 10 projects, our own Australian space project, who have started and will deliver in 2 years' time. The total value of 20 million for this 10 project. And then the other program we are running are infrastructure. And the space infrastructure is very high. So the agency has decided to invest, to build some infrastructure to leverage all these ideas that people are having and wanting to develop in space, but needs the infrastructure to make that happen. So we're funding a mission control in Adelaide. Sabre Astronautics has been successful in the grant. We are developing a remote control operating center in WA. Fugro Marine, who is a specialist in remote asset management in mining, has won that grant. We have University of Tasmania, who is also developing tracking facilities in Tasmania. We're about to fund space qualification facilities, and we are doing another manufacturing support in Western Sydney. So all this is very important, and everybody will be able to use these facilities to grow. So that's where we're done. We also signed a lot of memorandum of understanding with other agencies, and that was really our way to say, we exist, we are here, who wants to cooperate and work with us? And the well we had around the world when we were created was really, really overwhelming. So we are talking regularly with up to 10 agencies with whom we signed accords, and we're trying to see some joint project we could do together. That's going very, very well as well. And then in October last year, our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, went to the States and came back announcing that he was going to give 150 million to the agency to support NASA in their Moon to Mars program, the Artemis program, and I've seen some question around this. So you may know that last night at 3 o'clock in the morning, Australia was the first country to sign the Artemis Accords. So we are in, and we are talking with NASA since May every week, maybe 2 or 3 times, to try to find a project where we can put our Australian flag somewhere into the Artemis program. Is it going to be around the moon, on the gateway? We are plenty of ideas. We are narrowing that down to 5, down to 3 projects, and we're gonna open grants to fund this project, and we're gonna work with NASA, and that's absolutely very, very exciting. So that's a big project, and we have done that in 3 different pillars. You can find a lot of details in our website, but lots of things happening around Moon to Mars. And one of it is also, we have a lot of gems in Australia in manufacturing. And when I say manufacturing, it can be a bolt, but it can be standards that were developed. It can be a software that we're using to track productions. And we are looking what we can export in space. So we have just opened a grant called Supply Chain for Moon to Mars, and we are helping whoever in Australia is manufacturing something and can think, maybe I can export that in space. They can apply for this grant and work with the prime to see if they can deliver and be a supplier to the prime for this supply chain. And that's going very well so far. So all that to say that we have lots of projects already in train. We have more coming for Moon to Mars, supply chain, demonstrator project, and then a big trailblazer. And we have, we're expecting, well, I guess our big mission, especially for our group who are delivering all these programs, we have to show that these investments that we have done are going to create jobs and are going to grow the industry. So we are tracking that every month. How many jobs have been created? What kind of investments is happening in Australia since we have launched all this program? And we can already show that there is a return on investment. And the more we show this, the more we're going to have some budget and the bigger things we're going to be doing. So this is just the beginning. And if you've heard as well, with COVID, everybody realized that we may have to think about how we depend on supply chain overseas, and you may have seen some initiative from the government for looking into manufacturing onshore. And for the first time, space was one of the sectors where we could manufacture onshore. 2 years ago, you couldn't have dreamed of having space listed in this. So it's now in there. We're working also on this. So yeah, the planets are aligned, no pun intended, but this is just the beginning after 2 years. So I think we are on the right track. Thank you.
Thank you, Aude. Perfect pun at the end there as well. Certainly an exciting time in the Australian space sector. So thank you very much for that insight. And now finally, I would like to introduce Kfir Damari, who is the co-founder of SpaceIL, inspiring entrepreneur, public speaker, strategic thinker, cybersecurity and computer networking expert. Quite the lineup. He's here to discuss SpaceIL's vision to pave the way for Israel to become the 4th country in the world after the US, Russia and China to land a spacecraft on the moon. Kfir, please take it away.
Thank you. Let's see if this works in a second. Okay. So again, thank you. And it's great to be here with all of you. First of all, I will share with everyone that I had the opportunity to visit Australia. I think it was now almost a year ago. And also to meet Megan Clark, and like it was amazing. It's amazing actually to see all the things that you were able to accomplish during those times. And actually COVID came, so we didn't have the opportunity to visit physically again. So I'm really happy that this happens. And maybe before I'll start sharing my story, I wanna address another thing. Now we have COVID-19. And now in Israel, we are in lockdown, and I'm sure that all of you are feeling it now or felt that in the last few months. And some people say that, we're at lockdown and we're thinking about space, and we're talking about space exploration and about dreams and big ambitious projects. And they say that it doesn't connect to this time. But I think it's exactly opposite. I think that, space for us is an opportunity to imagine, to explore, to actually go out of the physical place that we are today and just, use these dreams and imagination. And I think when we're dreaming, it gives us a lot of strength and hope in everything we want to do. And now I'll start sharing the story of SpaceIL. I'll start talking about our little spacecraft called Bereshit. And I'll tell you that the story for us, it didn't look like this in the beginning. The story for us started a long, long time ago. It started in 2010. And maybe I'll share, one second, a video we did in the beginning, and then I'll tell you exactly how it started. Okay. So maybe for another second, I will tell you something about my background. You've already heard, but what I like to tell is two things. The first thing I like to say is that when I was younger, I believe that it's important, since I was younger, I believed it's important to be part of something bigger than yourself. And the logo on the top left is the logo of the Israeli Scouts, and I think that represents that. But the second part is that my background doesn't come from space. It actually comes from cybersecurity. I opened a few startups in that field. I was in the Israeli Intelligence Forces. I'm a communication system engineer. And I actually entered this field of space through the project, through this project called SpaceIL. And now we'll start.
In the beginning, I was only an idea, a dream, a fantasy. I was born in a bar to 3 fathers. Soon, I met the rest of my family. I had people who took care of me and helped me grow, and I grew and became stronger. When I met the president of our country, he told me that I carry with me the hopes and dreams of a nation. And he was right. Landing on the moon is not my only mission. I will carry with me a magnetometer to study the magnetic fields of the moon. But one of my most important missions is to inspire our kids so they can dream and explore new worlds. And my mission begins today. A couple of weeks ago, I left home and got on a plane to Cape Canaveral. I had hundreds of talented people who worked hard to prepare me for this day. I waited long enough for this moment, and I am ready. Yalla, let's get to the moon.
So the story of SpaceIL for me actually started on Facebook. A friend of mine called Yariv wrote on his Facebook wall that he wanna open the Israeli team competing in the Google Lunar X Prize. When I saw that, I immediately answered, if you're serious, I'm in. And this is basically how we started. A few words about the Google Lunar X Prize. To those who don't know that, it's an international competition run by the X Prize. The X Prize has a lot of different competition. Google was sponsoring this specific competition. And in order to win, we had to land an unmanned vehicle on the moon, to move 500 meters, to transmit videos and images back to Earth. And the first team to achieve that mission, that simple mission, wins $20 million. I will tell you that when we started, we believed that $20 million is a lot and we can get to the moon with much less. And I'll explain why. Maybe one of the reasons, because I don't know how other people start a project of reaching the moon, we actually started in a bar. We've met in a bar in the city of Holon in Israel and started drawing how the spacecraft is going to look like. You can see that wasn't taken at the same date, but it was taken at the same place a few years later. With me, you can see Yariv. He is an electronic engineer, and Jonathan, he's our space engineers. He was working in space in his army duty and later on in the Israeli aerospace industries. And we met together and started drawing those pages that are on the table and thinking, designing this spacecraft. I will tell you that the first design was basically this. It was a CubeSat, a nanosatellite with deployable legs. And I can tell you that, you know, going to the concept of new space, I think that we actually thought that we can take this concept of CubeSat. To those who don't know, it's really small satellites. The looking at CubeSat 3U, which is 10 on 10 on 30 centimeters. We wanted to add deployable legs and then go all the way to the moon. Those new technologies, those CubeSat allow small organization with $100,000, $200,000 to have their own satellites in space. And we're just thinking of taking that to the next level and going to deep space and also land on the moon. I will tell you that it's a nice concept, but what we really quickly realized that it's not possible. And the reason it wasn't possible was the engine. When we looked for different engine, the smallest fuel tank we were able to find was roughly this size, and it weighed 7 kilos. Now, the initial design was, again, really, really small, and it weighed 5 kilos. So it weighed from more than the whole design of the spacecraft. And another interesting thing to realize as we calculated how much fuel do we need. And in the beginning, we thought that, you know, if you look at the design, there's a small amount of electronics. We looked at a phone. We said, okay, a phone basically have all the electronics you need. It weighs 200 grams. You have a communication system. You have the batteries, electronic system, cameras, sensor, basically everything. And 200 grams. So we realized that you need around 4 times, or somewhere between 3 to 4 times the fuel, which means around 1 kilo, including everything. Now the fuel tanks were weighing 7 kilos. So now we needed 7 times 4, the amount of fuel that we needed to reach the moon. And we realized we don't have enough fuel, and we needed to move to bigger fuel tanks. And we moved from 1 fuel tanks to 2 fuel tanks to 4 fuel tanks to bigger 4 fuel tanks. And it took us a long, long time to get to the point that we actually had a design that can work. To those of you in the audience that are thinking about iron engines, I will tell you that they have enough thrust to get you to the moon eventually. They don't have enough thrust to actually stop the amazing speed you're flying into all the way to the moon, and I'll actually allow you to soft land on the moon. So they don't have enough thrust for that. So we had to use liquid engine, and eventually only around 2017, we got to the point that we had the designs of the spacecraft. Now, it's not just that the spacecraft became bigger, everything became bigger, the size, the weight, but also the timeline. We were planning to land in the beginning in the end of 2012. As you can see, eventually we're able to launch the spacecraft only in 2019. That's the first time we had a working spacecraft that is ready for launch. And again, instead of a 5 kilo spacecraft, we got a 585 kilo spacecraft. If you take out the fuel, it's 160. But even those 160 are most of them the fuel tanks and what's holding them together. So I think that was the major challenge, understanding how the spacecraft is going to look like. It wasn't easy. It took us a long, long time. Israel, I would say, has amazing capabilities in space. You know, we have satellites, but this was the first time we went to deep space this time, and the first time we tried to land anywhere in the universe. So I think there was a lot of things we had to learn during this process. But eventually we're able to find that design that can get to the moon and actually hopefully land there. Eventually we hard landed. I'm telling you at the end of the story, but we'll get to that soon. And maybe before we move on with the story, maybe we'll summarize 8 years of work in 1 minute. So I told you a bit about the spacecraft, but now I'm going to talk about another important thing that you need in order to get to the moon, and that's the people. In order to get to the moon, you need an amazing group of people. I will tell you that when we started, we're actually a private nonprofit. For those who don't know, we are not a commercial company. We're not an official part of the government. We're a private, educational, scientific nonprofit. And we actually started with a group of volunteers. This is a picture in 2011, and it's with the Israeli president and Rona Ramon, the wife of the first Israeli astronaut. And most of the people you see here in the background are just volunteers that joined in to help us take this incredible challenge and tackle it. And really, you need so many talented people with so different type of skill set. So it was really hard, but we really were happy to get so much support. And if we're talking about support, so of course there's the support of the Israeli Space Agency and the support of the Israeli aerospace industries that were our biggest partners. But also, I'll speak in a second more about the money, but I'll tell you that most of the money came from private donors. And the government gave 2.5 million. The project eventually cost, not as we expected in the beginning, 8 million. It eventually cost 100 million. And as the spacecraft became bigger, everything became bigger. And most of the money actually came from private donors. So we had the Maurice Kahn, who donated more than 47 million, and the Ezersol family more than 23, but others that donated millions, Schusterman and Adams and Sami Segol and Mini Circuit, and the Israeli academia and commercial sponsors and educational partners, and many, 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 many more that joined in to allow us to take this really big dream and make it into a reality. And if the picture before was the picture in 2011, when we started, this is the picture in 2019. And you can see around 100 people, full-time employees, not volunteer anymore. Half of them are Israel or SpaceIL employees. Half of them are the employees of the Israeli aerospace industries. Those that you cannot see their faces are working there. That's the reason you cannot see their faces. A few more from the Weizmann Institute, but basically around 100 people. But we also had hundreds of volunteers that were also part of our educational mission. And I'll tell you a few more about that soon. And the cost, as I mentioned, was $100 million, which is a lot of money. Most of it came from big donors that I've mentioned, but we also had smaller donors. And I always like to remind us that we also had a kid who donated $18 that he got for the holiday so that Israel can get to the moon. And we're really thankful for all of them, the big donors and the small donors. And really, we could not have done this without their support. And of course, before we took the spacecraft to Cape Canaveral, we also did a lot of testing. This is in the Israeli Aerospace Industries facility, the big vacuum chamber. We took all their out, we heat it, we cooled it plus minus 100 degrees, but there were a lot of testings and a lot of things we realized that did not work as expected in general in the project, but this is the nature of this project. A lot of things don't work and you need to find them and you need to fix them. So it's important to remember that. And we also took with us something really special. It's a time capsule. It has 50,000 books in 37 languages. It has the symbols of Israel. It has pictures that we took with kids along the years. We had blessings that kids send us. And you already know that the spacecraft crash landed on the moon, but the manufacturer of this calculated, and as far as we know, it survived the crash, and it's in one piece on the surface of the moon with some other surprises. And we're offering anyone that wants to see what's exactly there to just go and check. And you're going soon also to the moon, so that might be also one of the options. And everyone are welcome. We also took a scientific experiment with us to study the magnetic field of the moon. It collected information about the magnetic field while the spacecraft was descending. This information is being analyzed in the Weizmann Institute in UCLA. And we packed the spacecraft and we took it to the airport. This is one of my favorite pictures because it says on the back in Hebrew, a spacecraft in front of it. Okay, so everyone will know that this container has a spacecraft. And it was just part of the marketing that we did to show people that the spacecraft is on its way from Israel to the moon, and it's going to the airport. And in this picture, again, I want to stop and remind us when we're loading the spacecraft to the airplane that this wasn't just the first Israeli spacecraft. This was basically the first private spacecraft in the world to ever reach the moon. And that was something really unique. And, you know, usually when people thinking about a spacecraft, they think about a government that is sending a spacecraft. So usually the government will use the Air Force to take the spacecraft from one place to another place, but we are not a government, we're a private nonprofit, and we had to just buy a ticket on a plane. And with the spacecraft, some people say that there were oranges or peppers. As far as I know, it was medicine because of the humidity that the spacecraft needed to have in the airplane. But on its way from Israel to Cape Canaveral, Florida, it actually stopped in Europe, dropped some things, and then continued. And again, because it's the first private spacecraft ever, this just didn't sound logical to a lot of people that comes from the space industry and just said, wow, it's amazing. But eventually, after it stopped in Europe, it got to Cape Canaveral, to SpaceX facility. We connected it on top of an Indonesian satellite. There was a small US satellite in between, and we're ready for the launch. I will tell you that SpaceX did an amazing work. They dropped us exactly where they were supposed to, and we could start the journey. I will tell you on a personal level that when we started in 2010, we were planning to launch the spacecraft in 2 years. I wasn't married. I had a girlfriend. I did not imagine that I will get to this launch with a 5-year-old kid and a 2-year-old girl. So it was really an amazing experience also for our family. And for everyone. We had volunteers and employees and families and so many people that came to be part of this amazing moment. And we could actually start our long journey to the moon. The launch was on February 22, 2019, and we had around a 2 months journey all the way to the moon. This was the first picture we published to the public. A picture of the spacecraft with Earth in the background, the Israeli flag, and with the sentence, small country, big dreams. And the first time we showed that sentence. And we really, I will tell you that we designed this image 8 years in advance. We were thinking about how we can connect people to this journey. And we decided to take a few of those pictures to show how we are getting farther from Earth and getting closer to the moon. So this was just the first, but we had many pictures shown later. And the journey from Earth to the moon, I won't get too much into it because we don't have enough time, but I will tell you it was a struggle. We thought it will be easy, but then there were so many malfunction and things that didn't work as expected. And the team had to work day and night to make sure that the spacecraft will reach eventually the moon. And I will share one story, and that's the story of the small orbits underneath. And that's the wedding rings. That's the story of Aviv, one of our engineers who was planning to marry the woman he loved. So they scheduled it between the launch and the landing because we thought we were going to have a lot of free time. And eventually he got 36 hours to go get married and come back to the control room. So we had a lot of challenges, but eventually we managed with all of them. And we managed on April 4, 2019, we've managed to reach the moon. We've managed actually to do the lunar capture maneuver, which is, I think, the most critical maneuver, because as we're getting closer to the moon's gravity starts to pull us. And it's pulling us so strong that if we will not rotate and stop ourselves, we will just get to a speed which is higher than the escape velocity from the moon, which means that we just fly to somewhere random in the solar system and lose communication with the spacecraft and never reach the moon. So it was really a crucial maneuver. It was also crucial because we had one chance of succeeding, another maneuver, backup maneuver 50 minutes later, and that's it. And it wasn't easy, it was stressful, but eventually we succeeded in this maneuver. And we got this amazing picture, the first picture that was taken by the spacecraft of the moon from close by. We got other amazing pictures. This is one of my favorites. That's the dark side, what they called. It's actually the far side. You can see there's lights there. And there's the white thing on the background somewhere far away. And some people didn't understand what's that. So other in the internet helped them. We had a lot of people in the internet that helped during the process. So if you didn't realize, that's actually Earth. And sometimes Earth looked like a moon if you're standing on the moon. And we got to the landing process, and I will tell you that everything was just as expected in the beginning. And we got this amazing picture, what we call the selfie. This picture was also $1 million picture. And the reason I'm saying it's a $1 million picture is because although the competition was supposed to end in 2012 and postponed into 13, 14, 16, and so on, and eventually on March 2018, they decided to close the competition. The X Prize team, Peter Diamantis was with us in the control room. And when he saw the picture, he called the board members of the X Prize, and they decided to give us $1 million, which we actually received. We went to LA and we got both this big check, but also $1 million in the bank. So it's literally a $1 million picture. But just after we got this picture, there was a malfunction here. We're 13 kilometers above the ground when this happens.
IMU 2 not okay.
So there was a problem with one of the subcomponents, the IMU, the inertial measurement unit, but we actually had two. It said IMU 2. The spacecraft moved to the second one. Everything was okay. The team in the control room decided they want to intervene, although it was supposed to be, that part was supposed to be totally autonomous. And we had an issue with information flow. There was one team in the control room that knew a few things that the one that was in charge of the control room just didn't know. And he made the best decision he could, but eventually realized it wasn't the right decision. He wanted to restart that component so the spacecraft will have more than just one sensor to rely on. But what he didn't know that was an architecture issue. And when they sent the restart to one IMU, the second also stopped, and eventually the spacecraft saw that it has so many issues with the sensor, so it restarted the main computer, and then it restarted the engine, and eventually the engine came back, but it was too late. And maybe I'll take you to the final moments of that landing. You will see in a second that the spacecraft, the engine comes back, but look at the height of the spacecraft. It starts from 600, and look what happens.
We are resetting the spacecraft to try to enable the engine.
Engine working.
מנוע ראשי חזר לעבוד. We have the main engine back on.
No, but it's not. No.
איבדנו הרבה גובה. מצבנו לא ברור.
He's saying that we lost a lot of altitude. The situation is not clear. Well, basically the situation is clear. 149 meters above the ground in a speed of 1 kilometer per second. We reached the moon much faster than we ever expected. NASA took pictures of that landing site a few days later, and you can see from those pictures that we definitely made an impact on the moon, no doubt about it. And maybe to summarize this mission, I will say this is the first Israeli mission, but it's also the first mission of a country in the size of Israel. This was the first private mission in the world with the smallest spacecraft, almost with no redundancy, although the component that failed, we had redundancy there. But to complete that, I will say that it wasn't just about engineering. It also was a lot about education. I will tell you that we got a lot of amazing responses after the crash landing from all around the world. I will tell you that we got one of the highest honors in Israel to light the torch in Israel Independence Day. But what we had in our mind all along is that we wanted kids to say, wow, Israel was able to do that, but also to realize that there's a lot of science and technology behind that. We wanted them to know it's not about just fuel tanks and solar panels. It's a lot about creativity and resilience and teamwork and dreaming and passion and overcoming so many obstacles, so many. This is why it's actually written twice there, because there were so many obstacles during the pack. And we didn't just have the employees, we had hundreds of volunteers that went into classrooms. We've met more than 1 million kids. And we've told them that, yes, it's rocket science, but this is something you can understand. Even if you're a 5-year-old, we had a kid's book, we had cartoon videos, and we told them that we're building this spacecraft, but what we're looking is that they will build future spacecraft. And we've been everywhere, from soccer games to basketball games to literally everywhere, to get people and families to talk about space and this journey. And eventually, in the beginning, we call it the Apollo effect. Eventually, we got this, what we call now the Reshit effect. And so many kids that were inspired. This is in the background, part of the Israeli Halloween, where kids dressed up, and so many dressed up as astronauts, as the spacecraft. And it was really an amazing experience. And maybe to finalize this, I will say two things. First of all, I will tell you that that I had a conversation with two people. One of them told me, you succeeded in 95% of the mission. Amazing work, well done. The other person next to him said, no, you succeeded in 105% of the mission. And we were looking at him, why do we mean 105? And what he said was actually very interesting. He said that if we would succeed and soft land on the moon, which is what we actually wanted, everyone would just probably do like and continue on with their lives. And I think that the fact that we didn't succeed, we crash landed on the moon, made a lot of kids cry. And this was not intended. This is not what we want. We made kids cry. But after they cried, they had deep conversations with their parents, with their educators, about the meaning of success, about the fact that in order to succeed, you need to go through a lot of challenges and not stop and continue on. And I think those deep conversations would never happen if we were just soft land and everyone would like. So we wanted to soft land, but maybe the educational impact that we did here on Earth was bigger because we've crashed. And to finalize this story, I will tell you that now we're working on a Bereshit 2 mission, and I hope that in a few weeks we'll be able to share with the public everything about it. But I also said before we started to this closed group that we're looking for international cooperations, and I really hope that we will have the opportunity to work also with Australia. So that's me, and that's the Bereshit story. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Kfir. Such an, I think, inspiring journey, and I think it really showcases the capacity for people to execute on such ambitious and grand challenges. And I think I can definitely speak personally, and for a lot of people that I know, that you definitely accomplished the goal of inspiring the next generation of space enthusiasts. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that journey. I am now going to go to the Q&A part of this evening, and we've got a few questions that the audience has prepared in advance. So I'm just going to pick one of those now. Let me just have a look here. So I might start with this one to you, Em. So the question is, what are the underpinning skills of a rocket scientist? And I guess you can answer this from the perspective of, it's not just certain aspects of engineering you need to understand. So what are those skills that you think people can learn to be a rocket scientist?
The underpinning skills of a rocket scientist. Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I'm going to say you need more than just engineering knowledge and an understanding of physics. I think it's about it's not just practical skills, it's a mindset as well. I believe you actually, Andrew, have a shirt that describes it best, that said that you have learned to use the word impossible with the greatest caution. It's about tackling those challenges. It's about seeing a complex problem, and instead of thinking that's too big or that's something that's not possible for me to solve, it's trying to find a solution. And if you can't find a solution, then you get together with other people that can collaborate on finding something or an alternative that works. It's about that entrepreneurial mindset, I suppose, that's willing to tackle challenges and find and collaborate on the most challenging projects and problems of all. And that combined with engineering knowledge and skills, plus a great support system and a lot of research knowledge, yeah, sky's not the limit. Moon's potentially also not the limit. We can see how far we can go. That's it. It's the approach, I think, that underlines a rocket scientist mindset, or skills and capability, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Yeah. And now our next question. So I'll direct this to the general group here, what are the most relevant economical activities that can be explored in space? David, I'm not sure if this is something that you might be able to attest to, but that's the question there.
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure if that's looking at the end user in industry or where the best economical return is. So you look at, I sort of divide industry into the upstream and the downstream. By that I mean the upstream capabilities, such as what Kfir's just talked through in terms of his fascinating project that he did in terms of creating a spacecraft, launching a spacecraft. So the upstream, the manufacturing side, the launch side of it, manufacturing spacecraft, so forth, or the downstream where you're leveraging the data and the applications on that particular asset. And Aude talked about the economic growth in Australia and the growth in employment we have to create in this country. Both elements are really critical. Generally, you find a lot more people on the downstream because you look at leveraging the data. Satellite communications can take us to many far places, and the need to create new applications and new technologies to layer on top to make that more efficient. Same with Earth observation, geospatial intelligence, space domain awareness, and so forth. But the really cool and exciting bit is building new satellites, launching satellites, creating new technologies. So there's that balance to have there. But you've got to look, okay, where's the economics? Often the profitability of the upstream is not the same as the downstream. Downstream can be more profitable, can employ more people, but there's got to be that balance. Both halves need each other. You've got to have the customers at the end of the day, but you've got to have that capability. And that's the balance we have to create in Australia. It's a tough act to balance.
Yeah, definitely. So I've got also another question, and Kfir, I think you might be in the best position to answer this one. So if someone is inspired to have a startup or a space startup alongside their job, or maybe even if it's in a voluntary capacity, like many of the people who worked at SpaceIL during that journey, but they don't yet have that formulated idea, what are the first steps that they can undertake to sort of start off and to sort of have that first, I guess, beer with their colleagues and write down those winning designs that will inevitably get changed in the future?
So it's a really good question, I would say. And first of all, I will tell you that when we started, I was also working somewhere else for like around a year. And I will tell you two things about it. First of all, eventually, if that happens, you need to move to full-time to make things happen in space. And I think in general, in entrepreneurship, when eventually there comes a time that you need to invest a lot to make that happen. But I think that during the process, and I think that's something really unique about space, that we have a lot of people that want to be space entrepreneurs. And I think it's amazing. And I think today, you know, the ecosystem, the technology got to the point that it's possible, but you still need a lot of expertise and a lot of know-how. So I think that the best way to actually start is just talk to people. And I will tell you that if we look at SpaceIL project, we had half of the people that didn't have any expertise in space. They just had their imagination. They had expertise in different places, but together with those people that come from the heavy space industry, by the way, both in Israel and people that we got from abroad to be part of this project, they sat together, and those young people with a lot of ideas had all kinds of ideas that they throwed, and the people, the more old people that come from the heavy space industry said, no, this won't work, this won't work. And sometimes they said, wow, we never thought about this concept. And I think that in space particularly, you need to realize that you need to have a lot of people involved, a lot of expertise involved, because you need to make things work on the first time. And there's a lot of different types of, we had 14 different types of engineering combined in the project. So you need a lot of different types of skill set to eventually make sure that you have this complete vision of the project.
Yeah, definitely. That diversity of thinking is something that I think we've been hearing is very important as part of formulating those new ideas. And fortunately, we don't have too much more time left. So I think we have chance for one more question. I think this is going to be more relevant to the space agency. So, Aude, this is probably in your area. Do we plan as a nation to get involved in Project Artemis, the NASA return to the moon project?
Yes, absolutely. I think I did mention that one of our biggest programs is the Moon to Mars. And Moon to Mars is to work with NASA on the Artemis project. So we are talking to NASA, finding what is the best gap that they have, the best gap that we can fill with our skills and capability. And I started today to say that we have signed the Artemis Accord. The Artemis Accord is a guidelines that NASA has put in place for people and nations and countries who want to work with them on the Artemis project. And not only because Australia starts with an A, but also because I think they're very keen to work with us on that. We were the first one to sign the accord. So definitely there is a lot of cooperation to be made there. And yeah, SpaceIL, I'm happy to talk about opportunities and joint missions all together, as long as the applicants for doing that piece of project is Australian, but we will need to partner with people who have done that to make sure that we leverage as much success as possible. So 1,000 billion times yes to that question.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Well, that concludes tonight's webinar. So a big thank you straight away to all of our amazing inspirational speakers. It was very interesting and engaging what everyone had to say. Thank you to all the people watching this as well. And this recording will be available on the UQ Ventures YouTube page in the coming days. So thank you very much, everyone. And yeah, have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure.